fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Policy Director for Push for Excellence, and we want to thank you for joining us here on our Saturday morning forum. We'd also like to thank Word Network for bringing you to us and us to you, and yet we recognize that we have many viewers who are watching us now on Facebook Live, and if you're doing so, we'd like you to like our page. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, we want you to subscribe to our page so that you can gain immediate access to all that is occurring in our organization. And speaking of that, we produce a lot of content for you, and so we need your financial support, and we've made it really easy for you to give. 3 different ways, in fact. You can simply pick up your cell phone right now and hold it to the QR code on your screen and give right on the spot. And if you prefer, you can take that same phone and text the word PUSH to 41444. Text PUSH to 41444. Last option, you can go to our website at rainbowpush.org and simply click on the donate button. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We have a lot to share with you today. The push is on.
Today we are placing a special emphasis on Labor Day. It's Labor Day weekend, and we have a lot to talk about what the state of American labor is, and also we're going to talk about a number of other things. Well, we're going to talk about what's happening in Kentucky. What is that crisis really all about? What's happening in Mississippi? We want to talk about in our spotlight on education, what's happening with this student loan debt student loan debt executive order that President Biden has just issued. What does it mean? How good is it? What's wrong with it? What are the challenges our students will still face? What are we saying to colleges and universities? I know you want to know, and we're going to share that with you. Also, we're going to talk about, in the spotlight on education, we're going to talk about what's happening with the teacher shortage, what's driving the shortage, what impact did COVID have on the decline in people going into the teaching profession. Why don't more people want to teach? And we're going to share some insight and information with you. And then finally, we want to make sure that we look at the historic March on Washington. We talked a little bit about it last week. I don't think many of us realize that that march really gives us a bird's eye view of what's happening in America today, the rising racial tensions in America. They were like that 59 years ago. And so I just wanted to share a few brief remarks from Rabbi Sam Gordon, who looks at the tensions, the racial tensions, the racial animosity in America 59 years ago. And here we are 59 years later, churches still being bombed, temples being attacked, and African Americans still being gunned down on the streets of America. We'll be right back with all of these details.
Hello, I'm Liz Schuler, President of the AFL-CIO.
And I'm Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. We are a federation of 57 unions representing 12.5 million working people in every type of job across our economy. Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition has done such tremendous work to inspire and strengthen our communities, and we are grateful to have you as an ally and a friend. And to all of you, we want to wish you a happy Labor Day.
But Labor Day is about much more than just a day off. It's a time for all of us to come together and reflect on the contributions of working people whose labor made this nation.
Well, we acknowledge and celebrate the working people who locked arms with faith leaders and civil rights activists in the fight for social reforms, who raised their voices to demand economic justice, racial equality, and dignity for every person in America.
It's a day rooted in resistance. The labor movement marched and sacrificed to end child labor. We challenged inhumane working conditions. We created safety standards.
We transformed grim, dangerous jobs into good family-sustaining career. Industry by industry, unions helped build the middle class.
And Labor Day was brought to you by the labor movement. Our innovations like the weekend make life better for everyone.
And when we say everyone, we mean everyone.
We are a movement in every industry, in every community, and we are laser focused on building a modern, inclusive movement with women and people of color at the center of everything we do.
Liz and I know firsthand the power of a good union job. It lifted both of our fathers from a life of poverty and put them on a path to a solid middle-class life.
Those union jobs changed their lives and changed our lives.
Unions transform lives, and we want every working person to know the power of a good, sustainable union job.
It's so much more than just a fair paycheck. It's respect from our employer and coworkers. It's having a voice in our schedules and working conditions. It's quality health care and a secure retirement. It's an opportunity for training and advancement.
When more workers have an opportunity at a life-changing union job, we don't just change our workplaces, we change our communities, we change our country.
But corporations and billionaire CEOs are doing everything they can to crush worker power and keep us from organizing. Anti-worker politicians and judges at every level of government have used their influence to weaken labor laws and take away our right to vote. Inequality is more rampant than ever, and too many workers feel hopeless about the future. Our democracy is under attack, and we are losing time to save it.
The bond shared by the labor movement and communities and leaders of faith have been instrumental to our history and to our success. That partnership still runs deep, and we know it now more than ever to protect our democracy, our freedoms, and our rights.
As we continue to demand equal pay, respect on the job, and an end to sexual harassment and discrimination in all its forms, let's join together as we fight for our collective future and protect the freedoms that are central to America's promise.
With all of us working together, we can create a more just and fair society.
And build a bold and inclusive future. So thank you, God bless you, and happy Labor Day.
Welcome to Spotlight on Education. We've got two, critical issues that we want to talk about today. This is our policy person, Dr. Sonia Whitaker, but don't tell her. She's our National Policy Director. And I got a question for you.
Yes.
They tell me that you got a shortage of teachers in public schools all across America.
Well,
what
listen,
you doing?
to say that we have a shortage of teachers would be an understatement.
Really? Is it that bad?
I mean, it's really that bad. I mean, it's to the point where, school districts across the nation have got to determine what they're going to do during this crisis. And and I do refer to it as a crisis, and one of the newest questions that I've been posing to the public, and more specifically to educational leaders, is what are you prepared to do differently as a direct result of the national teacher shortage? Emphasis on differently.
Well, let me ask you this. Why aren't people going into teaching? Why are people opting out of teaching? They taught last year or last 4 years, they say, I'm out.
I think that's actually a two-part question, the why, and you know what else I want to add to that, Reverend Jeanette, and the what happened. Because what we're not hearing people talk a lot about is after COVID, or we're still in COVID. Yeah, during COVID, right? I stand corrected. During COVID, the teaching profession, we lost a lot of professionals due to sicknesses, in some cases due to death. And then teachers who had to pivot from in-person learning to remote learning. As a direct result of that, there was a mass exodus from the teaching profession from adults who were considering retiring. And when that happened, they went ahead and turned in their papers. and then from younger teachers who were entering into the profession that decided that this was not what they signed up for?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to teach remotely. Number one, so many of your students are not capable of remote learning. Either, like you told us before, some didn't have electricity.
Right.
Others didn't have the Wi-Fi, didn't have the support at home to really do it. Or I saw parents that had 3 and 4 children in 3 different grades.
Right.
And so I don't have a bandwidth for that.
Right. Right.
Wi-Fi at my house has changed during COVID. And the other thing I heard on word on the street is we don't pay teachers as much as we pay anybody else that has a degree.
And you know, that's a great lead into the second part of this conversation relevant to the teacher shortage. In addition to asking people to consider what they're prepared to do differently as a result of the national teacher shortage, I'm also asking them to look at it through an equity lens. And the it is staffing in particular. Now, very often school districts will have multiple schools in the district, and far too often, and I'm referring not just to research, but to my own observation, administrators at the senior level or the district level will allow school administrators to determine who teaches where. Mistake number one. Particularly, and I'm really cool with going on the record as saying that, particularly now during this national shortage. What I'm recommending that school district leaders do is to work in collaboration with the administrators, but consider things as it relates to equity relevant to staffing. Consider things like I was saying earlier. If I have a school on the north side, Reverend Jeanette, who is fully staffed and everybody's certified, master's degree and beyond, and I have a school on the west side where half of the staff is not qualified, and what I mean by that is they're not appropriately certified and are their subs. From a district level perspective, relevant to doing something different, specifically to staffing through an equity lens, they've got to determine which staff, following union protocols, of course, they're able to move to balance out the staffing plan. I have not heard anyone in the nation say that. As of today, I have never heard anyone say that.
I think that's
Isn't that powerful?
That's a great thing. But also, elementary schools typically have a number of teachers who are not certified in any particular subject. They're generalists. Yet, when I graduate from 8th grade, I need to have a real good understanding of science, math, and English. So why wouldn't you look at considering, when I subbed in the south suburbs, because I had nothing else to do, I just wanted freedom. They wanted me to become their science teacher for the district. So you have a small school district with maybe 5 or 6 schools. Take people, pull them out of a general classroom and have them rotate to buildings and to classrooms teaching one subject, science, like you do in high school. Why have me sitting in a room? I'm a science major. I don't need to be teaching. Here's cursive writing.
Right.
I don't need to be doing that. I don't need to be in kindergarten. They have a guy that does STEM for us. He's an engineer. Why is he in the kindergarten class? He should be the science, the STEM director for the district.
And you're right, Reverend Jeanette. And isn't that what we're talking about? We're talking about what makes sense, but it requires a shift. You took the words right out of my mouth. A paradigm shift in thinking about how we ensure that students gain access, and that we have to take creative approaches like that, like having a person, what you're saying, teach toward their strengths. Black and brown children and children experiencing the impact of poverty, including white students that fall in that category, have been disadvantaged relevant to them reaching their fullest intellectual potential in our schools far too often. And so now, more than ever during this national shortage or crisis, as I refer to it, it requires that level of thinking and planning.
And so when you say equity,
yes,
is it fair that children who test gifted, there's no teacher shortage in gifted classrooms. I guarantee you there's no shortage, because everybody wants to teach there. Because you have children who are ready to learn, willing to learn, capable of learning. And so I don't want to be in that school where I'm struggling every day. There's a real issue of, why am I teaching? Am I teaching because I believe in educating the next generation of leaders? Or am I teaching because I need a job and I went through this little quick course? I got certified, and now I'm in a classroom. I don't know classroom management. I'm not even interested in a career in teaching. I think we're going to have to reimagine education, looking at international models.
Absolutely.
I know you know about the international models.
Absolutely. You know, and I'm looking, two things I want to say. One, when you made the comment a moment ago about it's not hard to find teachers to teach the gifted. Going back to focusing on solutions to what we should do differently with an equitable lens to address the national teacher shortage, I'd like to see some policy level conversations start at the federal level, which is not often part of the conversation, and it goes back to teacher pay. I think something differently needs to happen, not just with all teacher pay, watch this, but with highly qualified teachers who are willing to go and work with the students that need them the most. I'd like to see policy developed around that and some amazing blueprints, perhaps school districts or states that are actually implementing policies of this nature to make sure that the schools that have the greatest shortage have the teachers with the highly qualified, not only credentials, but receive more pay.
You need to eliminate my student loan debt. If
Yes.
I go to college and I have $100,000 in debt, you can't ask me to teach.
That's a
for
great lead
$40,000.
in to the
That's
next
crazy.
topic. That
I
was
don't wanna
awesome,
do
Reverend.
that. I mean, why would I do that? And I'm going, and you're going to put me as a new teacher. What classroom am I going to get? What school am I going to get? I'm going to get the lowest performing students. Behavior management, all of that. And I'm walking out of college. I don't know any of that. Yeah, I took student teaching. And when I took student teaching, I'm teaching chemistry, and this kid decides, I said, okay, we're going to do lab. Do not drop the sodium in that water because it explodes. Of course, the kid did. I'm 20-something years old. I'm very close to their age. I'm thinking, this is back in the day. I hit him upside the head. I'm like, you get out of this classroom. You're a pyromaniac. I'm thinking, what are you doing? I told you not to do it. The whole class is silent now.
I'm sure.
Because they're like, she's crazy. Student teaching, and I'm a student teacher, and I'm trying to figure out, because the classroom teacher left the room. I'm like, this pyromaniac is in here trying to blow us all up. My point is, not about me student teaching, but we have to really decide, if I graduate with $100,000 in debt, why would I work a job that doesn't pay me more than $40,000 before taxes a year? That's crazy.
Yeah, so that doesn't help.
You got to give me some kind of incentives.
Right, and so I love talking with you, Reverend Jeanette. I'm able to contribute.
Sure.
Well, and then on top of that, what about, we're talking about, okay, so different policy that would suggest that if you're willing to work with America's most vulnerable students, we're going to pay you more.
Yes.
But then policy around relieving them of their student loan debt, watch this, that is targeted specifically at classroom teachers.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine?
I'm telling you, more people would really go into the profession. And and pay me based on my performance, my student performance. Don't inundate me with paperwork. If I can turn this classroom around. I had my first year of teaching. I had the Carter Sweat Hogs. One kid was dyslexic. He's writing in reverse. I mean, I'm looking at mirror images. I'm like, oh boy, I didn't know. I'm not special needs.
That you didn't have training.
I didn't have training in that.
Okay.
I teach science. And how could he take science? Because everything with him was a mirror image. They had not properly dealt with him. And then, my kids were so terrible. They would go to another room and they were throwing things at the math teacher. So I had to meet with them and I said, they have labeled us. I need you not to embarrass me. When you leave this room, you have to behave, because we were fine in my classroom, but they left me. They were just terrified. They would terrify these other teachers. So I'm thinking there has to be some understanding that when you walk out of college, classroom management 101 is not what is in a book.
Right.
Not in the inner city.
And thus, I think, is a part of the reason, one of the variables that have caused people to either leave the profession,
Oh, yeah.
or then from a policy perspective, I think, in summary, we have to continue to consider those things that we can do differently.
And they need to ask
support
teachers,
them.
these legislators and these people that are making these decisions, and we're going to talk about student loan debt.
Yeah, you know, go ahead.
Can we do that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we kind of alluded to it.
Well, before we do that, what are we going to do about the teacher shortage?
You know, at the end of the day, I would go back to our recommendations, which is to make sure that school district officials, with the support of the Board of Education, because sometimes, listen, I just left trying to do this. Sometimes it's hard to make these moves. People are used to being in the same spots.
Yeah, they
I've
don't
been a
wanna
teacher
change.
in this school for 35 years, and I think that's honorable.
It is.
But you know what? You have 6 kids in your class. And over on the other side of this campus, I got a teacher with 30.
Well, the other,
Need I say more?
well, the other thing is, whenever there's a crisis in a school, I worked for CPS, they would dump central office, and we'd have to go down to the schools. How come the best, and Reverend Jackson asked this once, he said, how do you keep the best educators in administration sitting downtown when they need to be out there helping these schools? Not when there's a crisis, it's a crisis right now.
It is.
The administrators know how to do stuff. You may have to deploy them to buildings, not to usurp a principal, but to help.
Yeah.
I was in a school
Yeah, I
once, we
agree with
had
that.
2 retired principals, because the principal that we had, she just sat in her office, a fight outside her room, she never moved. And we're all looking at her, you think, there's a problem out there.
Right.
She said, yeah, they're outside my door. Then you have to go be the principal. And so these 2 retired principals, they're like in the hall. And you know, they taught little things like how do you help elementary children enter the building. You meet them on the sidewalk, you line them up, so forth. All I'm saying is we have to change what we do.
Yeah.
That's you're the educator, I don't know.
So what's your take on the relieving of student loan debt, which was information made public just a few weeks ago? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think, first of all, the president did an executive order trying to keep a promise. Well, it didn't solve the problem, and people expected him to solve the problem with the stroke of a pen. He could not do that. I thought it was a step, baby step, because the bigger issue is the debt has accumulated. It accumulates every year. Schools keep raising tuition every year. We need to have a freeze on tuition increases.
Okay.
Why are these colleges raising tuition? They don't pay the professors more. They're not building new buildings. They're not renovating anything. They're just charging more for room and board, charging more for tuition. So there has to be a ceiling on tuition, room and board. Stop that. And then I think that he has to require companies to help with this debt relief. And school districts, I will pay you. Or the government can say, I'll wipe away your debt if you teach in these communities for 10 years or something. Your debt's eliminated.
Right.
Because see, $10,000 and I'm already in $100,000 worth of debt and the interest is growing. Freeze the interest rates. I mean, so he didn't cover everything. They don't even have a plan for how do you apply for it.
Well, and let me ask you this. I could be wrong, but it seems to me relevant to this plan. It was specific to students who had obtained the Pell Grant, which is associated with the federal government. And most of the teachers that I've seen in these systems, they didn't
Didn't get a
take their
Pell.
loans through the federal government.
That's right, it went
So
private.
we've got to expand the conversation and develop policies around filling this teacher shortage. Reverend Jeanette, we're gonna need more time with this. I mean,
we got to come
another
back.
day, the more I think about this,
Well,
these
the banks-
recommendations we just put out there.
Well, we got to bring
Solid.
banks in. How do we bail out the banks and you can't bail out students who are now not the future, they're the present America. And then what are you going to do about the students that the debt they have is from these payday loan colleges, these that they didn't graduate, yet that debt is still there, and they can't use it to get a job to do anything.
Reverend Jeanette, I just thought about something.
For-profit colleges, not payday-loan colleges, for-profit colleges.
You know, I know we're getting ready to close, and you'll do closing remarks, but I
Oh,
just,
you can do the closing
well, I just
remarks.
can't
You
help
did.
but to imagine. Can you imagine? I think we would have a mass entrance into the teaching profession if there was a commitment to wipe out the debt of anybody who met the qualifications. Right now,
And committed
even
to
if we
4
got, and
years.
committed to 4 years, if we got that sooner rather than later, we could cause for statistically significant improvements in all students, but more specifically, students experiencing the impact of poverty and students of color.
And the final thing I would say is, it is unfair, it is unjust to require a teacher to get an education, 4-year education, pay for it, and then you pay the janitor in her building, in his building, more than you pay that teacher that's required to meet state standards to educate a child. It's unfair. Why would I go to school, spend 4 years, and all that money, and I get out, and I look at my check, and the janitor gets more money than I do. I'm not saying the janitor doesn't need to get paid, but I promise you, I start out behind, and I can never catch up. Because everybody in that building that's not a teacher or an educator makes more money than I do.
And there you have it, a spotlight on education. Whatever you do right now, don't touch that dial. The push is on.
And we need you to join right now. I know you're saying Reverend Jackson's birthday is coming up. What would he want? He wants 80,000 people, new people, to become members of Rainbow Push. You ain't got to do anything. Don't write your check. Just look at that QR code, take your phone. I know you got a cell phone, click.
Or take that same phone and text push to 41444.
Or, I know you shopping. You don't go to the store. You go into Amazon Smile. Get Amazon Smile, and everything you buy through Amazon Smile is a contribution. You don't have to add any extra money. You can just give. We're trying to make it easy for you. But don't leave us. We got more information.
Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant. I want to thank you for joining our International Saturday Morning Forum. You know, the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson spans the globe, and I want to thank all of our partners, our contributors, and our members for a job well done. Trucks just left the national headquarters on their way to Eastern Kentucky as we're responding to the Keep Hope Alive Kentucky Water Relief Plan. And I want to thank those of you who contribute not just water, but sanitizer, cleaning supplies, women hygiene products, and so much more left Chicago for Eastern Kentucky. And we want you to know hope is on the way. We're starting another campaign to help our friends and our colleagues and our national body in the southern part of our nation in Mississippi, particularly Jackson, Mississippi, that is going through a water crisis of epic proportion. You know, we've done this in Flint. We've done this through Katrina, and guess what? We're going to do it again. We want those of you to know in Jackson, Mississippi, Greenville, Mississippi, Fayetteville, and those surrounding areas, help is on the way. We've started a relief campaign, a humanitarian relief campaign, and we'll be telling you more about it. Go to rainbowpush.org. You'll be able to donate water. You'll be able to donate cleaning supplies, sanitizer, and all of those items are coming to Mississippi in just a few days. But guess what? You don't have to wait. You can click that button at the bottom of the screen and become a member and join the fastest growing social justice army in the world and help us keep hope alive.
Hello, I'm Robert Patillo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition Peachtree Street Project here in Atlanta, Georgia. I would like to invite you to this year's 23rd Annual Creating Opportunity Conference, which will be held October 19th through 21st at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Atlanta. This year, we will be embracing the change in an unstable global economy. We'll be having sessions on everything from political leadership to elections to a women's roundtable, international discussions on social economic issues that exist around the globe, as well as a birthday gala celebrating the 81st birthday of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. The gala will be virtual the first 2 days. You'll be able to log in and view the conference from anywhere in the world, and the gala on the 21st will be held in person live at the Hyatt Regency as we celebrate the birthday and legacy of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson. For more information, go to rainbowpush.org or email myself, R. Patillo, at rainbowpush.org, or our program director, Trina Heathington, at theheathington@rainbowpush.org. And as Reverend Jackson would say, make sure that you keep hope alive.
Good morning. Happy Labor Day. Thank you for joining us for the Saturday Morning Forum. This week in history, Attorney Thurgood Marshall was confirmed to the United States Supreme Court on August 30th, 1967. The vote was 69-11. Justice Marshall's career had been focused on racial justice, with many of his cases challenging the separate but equal doctrine of the Plessy v. Ferguson case. Marshall's most well-known case was, of course, Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. Arguing that racial separation and racial stigma are not what the United States Constitution stands for, Thurgood Marshall's contribution to the legal canon, along with Charles Hamilton Houston, Judge Constance Baker Motley, and others, continues to provide light to our paths during these moments of racial reckoning. During his service on the Supreme Court, Marshall participated in over 3,400 cases and authored 322 majority opinions. Many of his writings spoke to the core of the issues that affect workers to this day, including principles of access to opportunity in education, employment, and contracting. On this Labor Day weekend, we remember Justice Thurgood Marshall's ascension to the High Court. Later in due process, I will highlight stories of workers in food stores and medical facilities and training opportunities, as well as update you on the efforts to address racism at SeaWorld Entertainment's Sesame Place theme park. So stay tuned for due process. Finally, on this Labor Day weekend, let me talk to you about doing the work. For over 6 decades now, Reverend Jesse Jackson has been doing the work of fighting and establishing opportunities for those who had been historically and intentionally left out. 6 decades into the fight and counting, fending off COVID last year and fending off the effects of Parkinson's disease every day, Reverend Jackson continues to be our David fighting against the Goliaths who stand in the way of opportunity and human dignity. Today, let's encourage Reverend Jackson as he continues to fight for all of us. Join the movement. Go to rainbowpush.org and join Reverend Jackson in the ongoing fight for freedom and equality. And thank you for joining us for the Saturday Morning Forum.
Today we're going to spend a great deal of time talking about the March on Washington, 1963. Today we celebrate or commemorate the anniversary of that historic march where Dr. King, who was not the featured speaker, is the only speech that most of us remember or they report about when we say the 1963 March on Washington. And I have with us Rabbi Sam Gordon. He and I were about the same age when the March on Washington
You must have
occurred.
been much younger.
Yeah, okay. I was much younger. But in 1963, what have you learned since 1963 about that march and what it meant and kind of what the impact of it was?
Well, it came at a time when you and I were just coming of age and just becoming aware of the world outside, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we were children of the followed World War II. The leadership of this country up until 1960 were a bunch of old men, almost exclusively men.
Mm-hmm.
Eisenhower was the president, and suddenly there was a change. There was some sense of hope. We had a young president, President Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King himself was in his early 30s,
Yeah.
and he was, if not the elder, he was the great spokesman at that age. I think there was a sense of a unity of hope and purpose for progressives. This was not a march of just African Americans. In fact, right before Dr. King spoke, Rabbi Joachim Prinz, who had been the rabbi of Berlin,
Really?
spoke right before him and talked about what he learned in being the rabbi of Berlin during the Nazi era, right before the Nazis took over power, and said that the greatest sin at the time was silence. And so he spoke right before Dr. King. And this was to look at the pictures and to see just the numbers of people who were there. And there was not an ounce of violence at all. Just in comparison of January 6th.
January 6th. I was
January
ask
6th
you about
and
that.
and the level of violence, there was no anger. There was cause for anger, but that was not what was being expressed there. What was being expressed was the possibility of change. What's sad is that now, as we look back, we saw times of change, and we've also seen times, most recently, of going backwards.
And so if you think about going backwards, what were the people marching for in 1963? And if we were to march today, would it be the same thing or would it be different? Have we made some progress?
I think we've made progress. I think, again, you and I were young. It seemed to be a march about dignity and acceptance and respect. There was absolute violence. This was also the beginning of the television age, so that we saw what was going down in the South. We
saw Bull Connor.
We saw Bull Connor. The temple, the synagogue in Atlanta was bombed earlier in 1958, and later that same year, there was the terrible bombing at 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, where 4 little girls were killed and murdered by the KKK.
In church.
In church.
Attending Sunday school.
And, by white people who probably thought of themselves as Christians, and coming into a Christian church and murdering 4 little girls in Sunday school.
And so you were talking about that same period, a lot of civil rights workers, voting rights workers were murdered during that, not just 63, but around that same period of time. Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney.
Medgar Evers.
And so there was this, we're shocked when we look at what happened on January 6th, but in the 60s, there was just unlimited violence against people of color, people of different cultures and different faiths.
Yes, but I think one of the differences was, particularly during that time, that the arms of the state, of our government, were on the right side, and that George Wallace could have stood in the doorway of University of Alabama, but the federal government came in and made sure, with federal troops, that that the law was enforced.
Because the Attorney General then was Robert Kennedy.
Right.
Well, as we're going to be unpacking this whole idea of the March on Washington in some detail. The march was about a number of issues. One of the prevailing issues was poverty.
Right.
And so do you see poverty, how do you see poverty today in comparison to the poverty that existed in 1963?
Well, I think there's a difference in poverty today in terms of disparity. I think the incredible disparity in this country right now between those who not just have, but those who have so much that we're not talking about 1%, we're talking about 0.001%. And I think things have been exacerbated by the pandemic. That there was, I think, a feeling, particularly with President Johnson, who followed in the next year, the war on poverty, that the role of the government, the role of our federal government, was to ensure dignity and an end to poverty. Now, that may have been too idealistic to think that they could end poverty, but it was the commitment to do so.
Well, Rabbi, I know that we have to have you back to talk more about the divisions that existed in America, cultural divisions and racial divisions that existed then and the ones that exist now. And so before you go, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the level of violence that exists today that was similar to the violence then.
Well, it's very frightening. And the violence that we've seen in Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina, at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, at the Sikh Temple in Milwaukee, that we saw in terms of, in Buffalo, the level of white supremacy, of the racism that is, not all of the violence is based on that, but a great deal is. And those who exploit those divisions for their own sake, leaders who exploit and create this this not just tension, but this hatred, and they live off of that hatred. I think that violence is especially frightening, as we saw on January 6th as well. When the state, when the federal government, when our state governments do not stand against violence, then people are given a certain legitimacy to their violence. And then you have this perfect storm of our gun culture, that the AR-15s, that the assault weapons being sold to young, I guess, impressionable, immature people, as well as to the haters. So the perfect storm of hatred and the guns and the opportunistic ability to use that hatred and express it through such violent means.
Well, so do you still see hope?
I always see hope. Keep hope alive. That's why we're sitting here. I've learned from Reverend Jackson.
You got to keep hope alive. And
I told a story at the Dr. King breakfast that I had read about Dr. King, that he had gone into a rural school with visiting one time, and he walks in and he sees the teacher take a couple apples out of her bag and cuts them up into pieces and some nuts and puts them on, and she feeds the children in her classroom, and he realizes that that's probably the only meal they're going to get all day, and he has to leave this school and go outside because he was crying. He didn't want the children to see him cry.
Wow.
And the belief that we have to have a nation based on compassion and caring, and that those are our values, and that those who have seen, particularly recent leaders who have seen the world in transactional terms and in the ability only to monetize what they have, and to not realize that the responsibility and the empathy for those who are in need, that's what has to drive us.
Well, thank you for sharing with us today.
It's always an honor to be here.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Deborah Cozy Lane. I'm the Financial Secretary of Treasurer for Amalgamated Transit Union Local 308. We are the rail personnel for Chicago Transit Authority. I am also here to speak to you about the importance of Labor Day. People have died and fought for us to have the right to work, to have the voice in the workplace, to not feel that we're invaluable in our workplace. This Labor Day, we celebrate just that, the strength of all labor unions across the United States of America. Labor union turns out strong leadership across the world, whether it's in legislation, running for an office, or just being a labor leader in the workplace to fight, an elected official in the workplace to fight. I am a product of all of that from Amalgamated Transit Union. And I want people to really understand the value in fighting to stay in the union and to continue to build unions in the workplace so that we won't give the power to those 1%ers to make us feel invaluable in a place where we should be feeling valuable. Now I want to talk to you about the Workers' Right Amendment. The Workers' Right Amendment will be on the ballot November the 8th here in the state of Illinois. And thanks to our Governor J.B. Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton-Eccles, we will have that right as workers to vote on November the 8th so that we can strengthen our union across this state of Illinois and lead the charge across other states in the United States so that we will have the bargaining rights that we should always have in our workplace. We will have the voices and the work benefits and the insurance that we need to take care of our family. But most important, the wages, that there will be equality and there will be a good fight for good wages in the state of Illinois and across the country so that we can be able to take care of our family without having our brains or our minds boggled because we can't afford to do those things. Workers just want the commonality that everybody else wants. We want to exist in the world that we were birthed to exist in. So on November the 8th, please play your part in uplifting the labor union and uplifting the working class. Vote for the Workers' Right Amendment on November the 8th. God bless you and God bless America.
We're excited to get more people involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in impacting public policies, if you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, you can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. For an annual membership of $35, or if you're a student or senior, $15, you can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. How do you become a member? Visit our website at rainbowpush.org and press join. Or maybe you'd like to support us. You can text the word PUSH, that's PUSH, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount you feel comfortable giving. You can also call us at 773-256-2775. Or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
I'm Todd Yeary, and this is Due Process. Today, we highlight worker concerns, beginning with the alleged attempts to limit free speech among employees of Whole Foods. At issue is the discipline of employees who choose to wear Black Lives Matter clothing to work after some store managers prohibited the paraphernalia. The company's lawyer argued during a National Labor Relations Board trial last spring that the Black Lives Matter movement was, quote, controversial, and its protests are marred by looting and violence. As a result, the company was concerned about the safety of its stores, workers, and customers, leading to the restrictions. However, lawyers for the NLRB have argued that even though companies have broad reach around issues of workplace conduct and rules, there is a view that the wearing of Black Lives Matter clothing is a means of giving mutual support and aid amongst employees. The message is one of affirmation and validation, not hostility and confrontation. Whole Foods has pushed back, stating that it prohibits staff from wearing clothing with political slogans. Yet the dispute has uncovered concerns that allowing the wearing of BLM clothing could be a first step toward unionization. Organizations like the National Retail Federation fear that a ruling that affirms employee rights to wear such clothing could create heightened conflict among workers as a result of affirming free speech in the workplace. However, standing in solidarity in word and action still sits at the core of protecting and defending workers' rights and affirming the value of workers in private and public spaces. A recent study has found that Black medical residents leave or are removed from training programs at rates far higher than their white counterparts. The result is that more Black physicians have been unable to access specialty areas of medicine that yield higher incomes, greater prestige, and are in greater demand in underserved communities. The researchers spoke to several Black residents who said they had either been fired, forced out, or had withdrawn from residencies under duress. The issues included being reprimanded for conduct that often went unaddressed with white residents, and having processes that offer little opportunity for Black residents to defend themselves against allegations. Black medical residents account for 5% of the total number of medical residents, yet account for 20% of the residents who are dismissed from their programs. And this trend extends to specialty areas like surgery and orthopedics. Many people fear that there isn't enough attention being paid to the attrition rate of Black medical residents, even though the focus on increasing the number of Black students entering medical school is beginning to yield results. However, the higher attrition rate brings with it the accumulation of significant debt without the benefit of the completion of medical programs or the placement in medical facilities, where the potential for higher income is greatest. Some of the Black residents indicated that the isolation they experience while enrolled in clinical residencies leads to higher rates of depression with little support to address their issues. And this is especially troubling for foreign students in clinical residencies, particularly from the African continent. Lack of support when dealing with lifestyle disruptions like family illness or other matters exacerbate the higher attrition rates for Black residents. Much more needs to be done in providing support both academically and personally to enhance the rates of successful completion of medical residencies for Black residents. This week, I, on behalf of Reverend Jackson, joined attorneys Ben Crump and B. Ivory Lamar, along with Jody Brown and Sean Brown, parents of the two little girls who were publicly rebuffed at Sesame Place theme park, to meet with the leadership from the park to discuss what occurred and to hear what is needed to move forward. While the meeting was initially set to be a mediation session as a follow-up to the meeting Reverend Jackson had with SeaWorld Entertainment CEO Mark Swanson 3 weeks ago, it was clear at the outset that the president of Sesame Place, Kathy Valeriano was not in a position to have a substantive conversation concerning the matter. While there were apologies offered and an invitation to return to the park free of charge, the truth of the matter is the meeting was largely pointless, and the offer to return to the park as a gesture of goodwill is a sign that SeaWorld Entertainment is tone deaf as to the seriousness of the matter and the need for a serious response. While company leaders continue to hide behind the assertion that pending litigation in federal court by other individuals is precluding a serious engagement with the Brown family, Jody and Sean Brown, brother and sister, believe that the issue is not capability, but willingness. Sean Brown shared the difficulties of trying to explain to his daughter that she had not done anything wrong to elicit the response from the Rosita actor. In his words, he should not have to explain racism to a 6-year-old. Jody Brown reiterated her assertion that the real issue is that the management of the park dismissed the seriousness of her concern that day when she raised the matter of the encounter. There are no additional meetings planned at this time. However, Reverend Jackson, who is personally vested in the resolution of this issue, will provide his thoughts in the coming days, even as he reaches out to SeaWorld Entertainment CEO Mark Swanson to press for a more serious engagement to resolve the Brown family's matter. Finally, we remember the birthday of Black Panther Party leader Fred Hampton, August 30th, 1948. An activist and community organizer, Hampton rose through the ranks to become deputy chairman of the Illinois chapter of the party. His economic empowerment strategies and creativity helped to establish a free breakfast program, while his commitment to peace in the Black community informed his work in helping to negotiate a peace pact amongst rival street organizations. The FBI infiltrated the Black Panther Party, having accumulated thousands of pages and volumes of information on Chairman Hampton and other members of the party. And on December 4th, 1969, police raided Hampton's apartment, killing him while he was sleeping. Expecting the police to raid his home next, now Congressman Bobby Rush did not return to his apartment, but pointed out the sheer brutality of the police in killing Chairman Fred in such a dehumanizing manner. Bobby Rush reached out to Reverend Jesse Jackson and turned himself in to police during the live meeting at Operation Breadbasket headquarters, the same space where our continuing commitment to building people and community in Dr. King's workshop continues. We remember Chairman Fred Hampton, his work, his legacy, and we will forever keep his memory and his name alive. That is this week's Due Process. I'm Todd Yeary.
Be sure to join us on our Saturday morning forum on next Saturday. We will continue to bring great content to you. And be sure to like our Facebook page and share when you're watching live. And if you're watching us on YouTube, because that's what you prefer to do, be sure to subscribe to our page so you can continue to get up-to-date information about what is occurring in our organization. We need you. We don't just need your financial support, but we need your hands. We need your participation. So we're asking that you seriously consider joining Rainbow Push, and you can do so by going to our website at rainbowpush.org. Keep hope alive.